And we thought we'd take 20-25 minutes to really maximise most of your time here. And what struck me immediately was, as we saw in the introduction, to have one Paralympic medal is fantastic. You've got a collection of 16 of them. To get one world record is incredible. But how many have you got? 30? 30 world records. Absolutely incredible. So I suppose what we'd like to do is start with your journey as Tanni the athlete and taking you through really from the very start, because here we are with lots of youngsters, and perhaps it would be interesting to see where you started, what your inspiration was.
Well, I actually became paralysed at the age of 6, and I had to start using a wheelchair. And I was a bit of an annoying child, I think, is how my parents would describe me. I had lots of energy. So for a couple of reasons, my parents thought it would be good for me to do sport. One, because actually access back then was really rubbish and there was no access for disabled people. And the other one was Dad thought he might calm me down a bit and help me sleep. And I've now got a 10-year-old and she does lots of sport. And for the same reasons. So it was always kind of, at the beginning it was about being fit and healthy. It wasn't about being competitive, although I did sort of want to win. So it just sort of gradually built up. And actually I tried loads of different sports. You know, I was the sort of the enthusiastic child with the there going, oh, pick me, pick me. And actually I was just really rubbish at everything. So the highlight of my swimming career, really embarrassingly, is I failed to drown. I mean, it was, you know, it was awful. And, you know, then I did archery and I was rubbish at that. They wouldn't actually let me have a go at shooting because they said I wasn't safe. You know, I just tried loads of stuff. And then it was basketball, and I really thought that was going to be my sport, and I was really bad at that as well, because I forget which way I was going. And then I had a bit of an altercation on court, which is really bad, actually. I got fouled off for fighting. Being Welsh, we're used to visually impaired referees. Especially in rugby, but anyway, it is true. The referee said I punched somebody, and my defence, which is really awful, I was 13, my defence was my hand was open, I slapped him. And you know when you say something, you go, that's not going to get me off, is it? And it was awful. Anyway, my PE teacher said, go and try athletics, because you can't get close enough to anyone to hit them. And that was it, really. And I kind of, from the minute I did wheelchair racing, I knew that was it. That was all I wanted to do. But it was really frustrating because the best girl in Britain went to my school and was in my year, and it wasn't me. So I didn't win anything. I mean, I didn't even win a class competition. You know, I won nothing at all. But what it taught me to do, it taught me to find good coaches, good training partners, good people around me, you know, and it taught me about losing, actually, because losing's miserable. But it meant that I kept trying more and more and more to win. So actually, I kind of finally beat Sanya offside. Not that I'm still bitter about her. No, so she was amazing. And it's a real shame because she never carried on with athletics and I did. But, you know, it just taught me so much about winning and losing. And, do you know, every single race I did, I threw up. It didn't, honestly, I did 5 games, 5 Paralympics, and it didn't matter. I was just scared before every single race. Gosh. You know, but you kind of just... You
learn to deal with it, I guess. Yeah. But you mentioned your first experience was really at school. The Commission does PE in schools, in primary schools, and delivering it. And we're trying to give, as you saw on that video clip, a really positive first experience. How important is that to really inspire kids? Or do we rely on parents? Do we rely on the clubs? Or should we be going into schools and really generating interest there? Is that where it comes from?
I'm a really passionate supporter of school sport because I think, you know, it is important, you know, that you can get sort of good quality teaching and you can teach the right skills, because there's no doubt if you learn good skills when you're younger, then you enjoy sport more. And, you know, what we see is, you know, a lot of girls drop out of sport at, you know, actually kind of 10, 13, 16. And some of it is about teaching the fun and the enjoyment and the good skills. But it's also about parents, you know. With my daughter, I have to admit, you know, I really struggled with her, because if you asked me to write an 18-month periodised training programme for an athlete, I could do it. It's harder to kind of find the right sport and the right things that she wants to do. And obviously, she hates athletics with a passion. She thinks it's the most boring sport in the world. Doesn't want to do it because of me. So it's her finding things that she likes and being supportive. And, you know, I try really hard not to be a psycho mum.
Yes, that's difficult, isn't it? We're putting
so
on a workshop.
hard.
We're actually putting on workshops for
psycho
parents. Psycho mums welcome. We're putting on workshops for parents alongside coaches for that reason. So this variety of sport, just for people to experience a wide variety, is quite key as well, because I guess you don't know what you're going to be good at until you try a wide variety of things.
Absolutely, and I learned lots of things from playing all the different sports, which I think was actually really good for me, so that when I went into racing, I had a lot of skills, and develop my stamina and fitness and some speed. And I think that's really important to just, because now I'm out the other side, sport's still a really important part of my life. You know, because I don't train anymore, but I still take part. I still do a few 10Ks every year. I get about a minute slower every year, which my husband loves pointing out to me. But, you know, it's kind of there for life. So, you know, I was very fortunate to get that, you know, competing for GB was amazing. But, you know, what I want actually for my daughter and for everyone else is that it's there forever. And, you know, it's great now because I can do different things. And, you know, I wasn't allowed to do different sports when I was on the squad, but now I can, you know, do different, and that's brilliant.
That's interesting. I mean, we have people here, Matt, we were talking to earlier, who's born with spina bifida. He's now part of the street sport programme, getting a lot of enjoyment out of it. We want more Matts. We want more people to come in and actually enjoy it. Now, what do we need to do to get more Matts?
That's the $1 million question. I mean, I think it's partly about coaching. You know, it's actually, you know, as a volunteer coach, it's really hard. My husband's a coach, and, you know, you're kind of working full time, and then, you know, you're doing coaching courses and education, you have to revalidate, and you're trying to, and you actually, what he wants to do is coach the group that he coaches. And I think it's about I think valuing volunteers is really, really important. Virtually everyone I worked with throughout my career, apart from a 3-year period, was a volunteer coach in sport, and that was amazing. You know, they weren't doing it for themselves. You know, I was very selfish when I was an athlete. They were just doing it to kind of help me. So I think volunteers are amazing. And it's working with clubs, and it's parents as well. You know, I think a lot of women have had a really bad experience of sport. And in school, certainly, you know, a lot of girls I went to school with had a tough experience. And some research we've done for England show that mums are much more likely to take their sons to play sport than their daughters, because they want to protect their daughters from the experience they had. So it's kind of reminding people actually that sport doesn't have to be kind of really horrible. It's fun and it's enjoyable, and you're kind of competing against yourself, and that there's so much that you can do. So there's lots of things. And just the games were amazing, but they were kind of the icing on the cake. You know, it's kind of a moment in time. There's going to be a spike in participation. But, you know, it's actually 2-3 years from now, that's when we'll know whether the work's really, you know, whether it's really changed. Yeah,
fantastic. So you as an athlete and your preparation was first class. You must have had a good team around you. Who was in your team?
I had 3 coaches, 6 training partners, dietitian, sports psychologist who was clinically trained, which I think is really good. There was sort of, I had lots of people who were kind of there, and they weren't sort of there all the time with me, but there was one lad I used to train with, and people always used to say to me, why'd you train with him, because he's rubbish? And he wasn't. I mean, I've actually rarely met anyone with so little athletic talent in their body, and he only used to turn up when the sun was shining, so in the northeast of England that wasn't a huge amount, but he was actually someone in the squad. He was kind of the glue that held us together. He was the one who, you know, when someone was having a good day, sort of tempered that against someone who's having a bad day. And it's really important to have people around you, I think, that you kind of trust. And he was always really honest with me about my competing or my training. And, you know, actually, the guys I trained with were amazing. Going into Sydney, I was the only one from my training group that made the team. And we were selected about 9 weeks out. And the rest of the guys turned up every single day for training. They didn't miss a session. And it would have been so easy for them to say, right, we're off. And, you know, for that, it was, you know, and they're still really good mates now. And actually, the friends that you make in sport, they're still there. They watch the Parliament channel. Do you know what? I mean, which is not the most interesting thing I'd have to say to watch, you know. And I'll ring them and say, what do you think of the debate? And they'll say, oh, great speech, or that was a bit dull, or I hated your jacket. And, you know, thanks. But, you know, that's kind of real mates in sport, and that's what you get, because you're going through that day-to-day grind. You know, training's hard. You know, if I had £1 for every time someone said to me, oh, is it really glamorous? And yeah, the bits, you know, competing in Sydney in front of 110,000 people was amazing. But the reality is that I lived in Redcar on the northeast coast for most of my career, and I spent most of it on the trunk road covered in snot. You know, that's the reality of sport, you know, and you've got to have something that gets you out of bed every day that does it. You know, we were training at, you know, at my sort of the hardest 15 times a week, 50 weeks a year, you know. When I had my daughter, I had a week off training. My husband was my coach and my boss at the time. He was my squad director, so that was interesting, where he came onto the ward and said, do you really need a week off? And it's like, I've just had your child. But you know, you do it, because actually what I really believe, you know, if you've got talent, I hate seeing talent wasted. You know, I've seen loads of youngsters in my career, loads of adults, who've just, you know, not done that bit of extra training or just not want, and actually if you don't want to do it, that's fine, but if you say you want to do it but you don't do the training, I get frustrated because you only have this limited time to achieve. I was lucky, 5 games, you know, lots of people don't have that, so you know, if you've got talent, don't waste it, because it's amazing to have that.
We've got a programme where we're looking at talent and helping talent on the island now with a team of people, similar to what you've just mentioned, around all the preparation that you can have for those at the top end. So we've got programmes, as you saw on the video, for participation, but programmes for those talented youngsters, you know, real high performance. And we mentioned a few of the names earlier. So I think the team of people around them is beginning to emerge. Great coaches on the island. And now we had the first coaching conference at the tail end of last year, and ongoing workshops. So I think in the workshops, that's the place that we can probably get to grips with individual cases and motivation and issues there. What was the toughest time that you had to go through to fight your way through to come out the other side and carry on winning?
Oh, that's hard. I mean, there's lots of little bits which feel really bad at the time, you know, a few injuries that take you out for a couple of weeks, and that's always miserable because you always want to get back training quicker than you should. And, you know, I was dreadful because I'd go around and find a doctor or a physio that would tell me what I wanted to hear. And I kind of knew that. So, you know, a part of that is having the trust in the people around you that say, you know what, just stop, you know, and people that would do that. Actually, when I had my daughter, I think was the toughest time. Because I had one coach who told me I couldn't be an athlete and a mother. And he was like, oh, thanks for that. He actually did try to get my daughter banned from the islands of Cyprus, which was quite funny. Because he said that being a mother, that, you know, I wouldn't be as competitive as I was before. And actually, so we then actually, after that got sorted, we went on to have a really, really amazing relationship. But actually, you know, not knowing, you know, as an athlete, you know, if you're injured, it's the stuff you have to do, you know, the rehab exercises. But being a mum was a huge shock. And basically, we just used to take her in the pram, and there's no social workers here, are there? Can you get me here from Guernsey? Actually, no, you probably can't. Right, okay. We used to sort of leave her in the pram, and then when she got a bit bigger, we dressed her in fluorescent baby grows. And she learned it's amazing, from being really, really, from crawling, she knew that she couldn't cross the lines onto the track. And, you know, that's incredible, really, you know, sort of 14-month-old baby, knowing that. And then when she was bigger, we used to put her in the long jump piss. With a bucket and spade and tell her it was the beach. And I mean, she was about 4 before she realised what a beach was, real beach. And gosh, she was disappointed because she genuinely thought a beach was sort of that big. But that was hard. It was trying to balance things. And I guess that the last year that I competed, I knew in Melbourne at the Commonwealth Games that was kind of it. Didn't quite know when I wanted to stop, and the last year was really hard. And you know, and to kind of make myself go train and do the things. And I'm glad at the time, I hated the last year, but I'm really, really glad that I did that final year, because I knew then that there was nothing more. You know, I had no regrets. But, you know, there's so many ups and downs that, and I think what's hard is you look at other people, when someone's successful, you think it's really easy, and you don't see, you know, the problems or the injuries, you just think, it's just me. And actually, you know, they're right, it's everybody. Everyone has that. Some people are just really good at hiding it, and others aren't. And it's listen to the good people around you, listen to the people you trust, and get through it. And actually, when you've had enough, then it's okay to do something else.
The good thing was you pushed through that, you came out, and you absolutely exhausted your career. You felt very satisfied, quite rightly, but you knew when the end was. And yet, even then, you wanted to give something back. A lot of people, I think, exhaust it, get everything out of sport and finish. So you found another way of giving things back, and you graduated in politics at Loughborough University. Who would have thought? You're the voice of disability sport in the UK, really. So when you were at Loughborough, that's a million miles away. So moving on to Tanni the politician now, really. That's quite a responsibility, isn't it? What's the challenge? What's the similarity of challenges that you face in the House of Lords compared to the competitive pressures?
It's actually, bizarrely, there are more similarities than differences. I mean, I never thought I'd end up in politics. Actually, I said to my head of department, I'll never go into politics because it's for losers. And you go, oh, right, okay. One bit of advice, it all comes back to bite you eventually. It's preparation, working hard, planning, you know, focusing, you know, prioritising. Those are all things that I learned from competing, and actually they're really valuable now. not being frightened to have a go. You know, I remember I used to throw up about 2 hours before I started warming up. And then actually once I started warming up, it was okay because there was nothing else. You knew that, you know, where you were going. And I think the things that, you know, I'm in the Lords, I'm not frightened to have a go. And actually it's really tough because, you know, when you're taking something, you get about 10, 15 seconds to decide whether you're going to take something to a vote. So basically, you know, when the minister finishes speaking, as he starts to sit down, you've got to be ready to go. It's hard when you see people walking, you know, one way or the other. And that's a bit, waiting for the result is a bit like waiting for a photo finish. And you're trying to count that way and that way. And when you win, it's brilliant, except you know it's going to get overturned when it goes back to the Commons. And when you lose, it's a bit like sport, because, you know, sometimes you win a race and you might not have been the best on the day. And sometimes you come forth and you were the best. You know, it's all that things. You know, medals are just quite a harsh way of viewing success. And it's a bit like that in the Lords as well. And the bizarre thing, you know, I went from being an old athlete, you know, I retired at 37. And every journalist would go, oh, you keep going, well done. I'm 37. Now I'm the third youngest in the Lords, so I'm called the young girl in the wheelchair. So I take it, you know, I'm happy with that, that's fine. Yeah.
The Paralympics moved on hugely, I think, this time. There was a great programme I really enjoyed with my friends who are not into sport, The Last Leg on Channel 4. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It opened up any topic with disability athletes, and with a laugh, with an open thing. And for people who weren't used to working with disabled athletes in any way, it really helped. Did you notice that? Did you notice a difference in feedback from that coverage?
Yeah, it was amazing. And I think around lots of things, you know, people are just worried, you know. If people sort of stop me in the street and talk to me, they're worried about what they should say, what they should call me, or, you know, if you've never met anybody who's disabled before, it's easy to kind of get caught up in, you know, terminology and things. And I think what things like the Last Leg did, and the Paralympics, it challenged the view of disability and impairment. And actually, do you know what? It's okay. You know, it's okay to ask people questions, or do you need a hand, or, you know, just actually ask them about their impairment, you know. I mean, in a polite way, of course, but I do think the Paralympics just brought home to so many people that being disabled, you're still just a person. You know, you might be very talented at something, but behind it, you know, just because you're disabled, it doesn't mean to say you're nice. You know, and you know, it's you can be horrible if you're in a wheelchair. You know, it's fine. It's not because you're in a wheelchair. You know, so I think the Paralympics just opened up people's minds to think different. And that's really exciting because, you know, in London we're trying to do an awful lot more in terms of accessibility. You know, we're trying to do different things. And people came up to me, you know, I was in Olympic Park and I was kind of running through the park because I was late for something, and somebody stopped me, and it was just amazing. And he just said, like, you know, I'm really sorry, but I need to tell you this, okay? And he said, I used to think disabled people were worthless and should be locked away from society, and they were just a drain on society. Okay. When someone says that, I mean, that's really harsh, and you go, right, okay. And you don't know how to react, you don't know whether he's going to say, I still think that, or... And then he just said, Paralympics has changed my view, completely and utterly changed my view. And you're like, wow. And actually for him, that's a really big deal to come and say that. I don't think he quite maybe realised how he said it. But, you know, that's...
There's a real honesty there, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and that's good. And honesty, you know, that's good. And that was amazing. So that's what the Paralympics has done. And I think, you know, it's opened up clubs, it's opened up sports, governing bodies are thinking differently. And hopefully disabled people themselves will think differently as well.
This is all more than a token gesture. This is integrated clubs and so on. I mentioned the coaches earlier, volunteer coaches, and the workshops that we're putting on. I think you've really inspired us to have a look at the challenges that lay ahead for us, and I talk as a coach as well. I coach a mixed ability group from county 5th level, junior, through to Paralympian with Danny Nobbs. And what I found with the group is you don't even notice the wheelchair. Yeah. The youngsters don't notice the wheelchair, and we're going to have a blind athlete from the Paralympics joining us, and they'll be getting the dog bell for the guide dog, and they'll be looking after we'll just do it normally. And it'd be nice to think that if there are people with disabilities, youngsters particularly, who just can't take that next step, as Matt has done, then, you know, there is a welcoming arm, there's a welcome in the clubs. And if there's a challenge, I think we can overcome that by just being honest and ask and work it out between us.
Absolutely, that's really important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks very much. It's been quite a nice intimate conversation, just you, me and 480 other people.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, Tanni Grey, thank you very much.
Thank you.